historicist view. This is also known as continuous historical view. Continuous historical. What does this third view say about the book of Revelation? This approach interprets Revelation as an inspired forecast of church history. Right? This is an inspired forecast of church history. Actually, they would say this is beginning from Pentecost to Second Advent. Since the book begins with John's own day and concludes with the return of Christ, the assumption is that it gives uninterrupted record of church age until its consummation. So book of Revelation basically gives you church history. You see? Church history. How do they do? Traditionally, proponents of this view have limited their interpretation of the events in the Revelation to the Western Church, ignoring, in effect, history of the Eastern Church. Right? They always talk about Western Church, like church in Rome, and how what happened to the history, what happened to the church in Rome is recorded. In addition, proponents tend to interpret Revelation from their own historical perspective, viewing prophecies as pointing toward their own time. So these interpreters, like maybe 50 years or 75 years ago, they looked at their own, what is happening there, and compared what happens in the book of Revelation. Like you know, I know even people have a problem now. Whenever they see a war, like for example, I remember when there was war between US and Iraq. You might remember it was like there was one war earlier than that, then there was a second war in 93. And all the preachers, convention preachers, and all the people started to come to the stage and say, the world is going to end. Whatever said in the Bible is being fulfilled today, right? What these people do, they interpret the events that happens by the book of Revelation and other passages of scripture and say, signs of the end is here. Look at the war, rumors of war, world is going to end. Armageddon war is coming, right? Everyone prophesied in 93 and they said, okay, tribulation is going to begin by 2000, Jesus will come back. Right? Because what they see, they immediately go and speak about the end. Compare, okay, these events records in the book of Revelation is happening now. Just like that. And I still remember when the COVID came, when everything was closed, they said, wow, time for Antichrist is coming. He will come now. That is what these people usually do. Right? Now what happens? There's a war between Hamas and Israel. And then now they say, wow, look at that. There people are killing Jews, all right, so that means the end is coming now. They try to bring maybe verses from Matthew, verses from Revelation, and they say, wow, end is coming now. Everything is going to end now itself. So this is what these people do. So how historicists explain, they explain in a way that the church history, the Roman church history, is what recorded in the book of Revelation from beginning till the end. So they might say, we are on the last phase, last chapters, maybe chapters of Revelation. And they say, yes, Christ is going to come now. We are in the last chapters of Revelation. That is what their explanation. As a result, there is a considerable diversity of interpretation. As such, as each generation must change its identification of the events depicted to make allowance for the subsequent history. Right? So not only these people, there are a lot of cults also did the same thing. They predicted their coming of Christ in like 1914, 1930s, 1914, and maybe other, even before that, there are people predicted Christ is going to come now. The kingdom is going to be established now. Everything is going to happen now. This is what their explanation. So this is what historical view suggests. What the book of Revelation explaining is not talking about the end of the present world system. Rather, it is talking about today, the present church history. This is what they say. Historical view was embraced by a number of reformers who saw Pope as the Antichrist. Now you know how people came to this conclusion, right? They said Pope is the Antichrist. And I hear that even from the beginning, like in my childhood, I heard that. What? Pope is the Antichrist. Why? Because this is the view of the reformers, right? Because they looked at the Bible, book of Revelation this way. Luther, Calvin, and many others said Pope is the Antichrist. And you see, still people believe that, right? And it has a degree of respectability in that it does follow consistent philosophy history, takes serious principles of divine providence. However, its liabilities outweigh strength and prevent it from being considered an acceptable approach. The allegorical method of interpretation is in conflict with a grammatical historical hermeneutic. The main problem is that they try to allegorize the scripture, spiritualize the scripture sometime. Moreover, diversity of interpretation fostered by this method only adds to a sense of arbitrariness and subjectivity that ultimately undermines the interpreter's confidence in legitimacy of this approach. So again, denying the predictive prophecy that way, that the entire events from chapter 6 to 20 depicting the future, and denying that idea that it is talking about the future, they derailed in their interpretation because they are using not a literal interpretation of the scripture, but an allegorical interpretation.